Imagine this. You're standing on the edge of a vast, sprawling city, watching the neon lights flicker against the night sky. The world around you hums with endless motion. People rush past, eyes glued to screens, consumed by a life that feels more automated than alive. You can feel the weight of their desires, their expectations, the pressure to conform, to strive, to want. And then, in the midst of this overwhelming torrent, you feel an unsettling stillness within yourself, a peace so profound it borders on discomfort. Now take a moment to truly reflect. What if you didn't need any of this? What if you didn't need to chase after more, to accumulate, to belong, to be seen? What if you had no desire for wealth, fame, or even validation? Imagine a life where everything that drives society, everything that fuels the engines of ambition and consumption, holds no sway over you. In that stillness, in the absence of all those needs, you realize a terrifying truth. You are a threat. Not to the people around you, not in any traditional sense, but to the very system that has designed their desires, their addictions, their fears. In a world built on consumption, status, and relentless striving, the person who needs nothing is a living contradiction. And this contradiction is more dangerous than you could ever imagine. Why? Why would someone who lacks all desire be such a powerful threat? And what does it reveal about the world we live in? You've heard the saying, desire is the root of suffering. But have you ever stopped to consider why suffering is necessary in the first place? Not just as a concept, but as an engine that drives civilization forward, keeps people moving, keeps them working, keeps them fighting for more. What happens when you take desire out of the equation? Does the machine collapse, or does it reveal something even darker beneath the surface, too? Here is where the paradox lies. The modern world has taught us that to thrive, to survive, we must want. Want for success, want for happiness, want for love. It's in our advertising, our politics, our social media. It's woven into the fabric of every interaction, every system, every transaction. If you don't want, you're irrelevant, you're nothing. But what if the opposite is true? What if the one who needs nothing is the one who actually holds the greatest power? Consider for a moment that we have been conditioned to believe that desire, whether it's for material wealth, recognition, or even the simple approval of others, is the very essence of what makes us human. That without these desires, we are incomplete, stagnant, purposeless. We are told that our worth is tied directly to our pursuits, our achievements, our ability to strive for more. And yet, in this unrelenting quest to become, we forget that there is a deep and quiet power in simply being. But to reach this point of being, you must first free yourself from the chains of desire. And that perhaps is the most terrifying thing of all, because in that freedom, the system, this intricate web of social norms, capitalist drives, and cultural expectations starts to unravel. The moment you no longer need what it offers, you become invisible to it. And the system cannot allow that. It cannot allow you to slip outside its control, outside its carefully constructed reality. This is the terrifying brilliance of the one who needs nothing. They become a living paradox, a threat that cannot be easily understood or destroyed. The system doesn't know how to respond to them because in truth, they aren't even playing the game. The question then arises, what is the cost of this freedom? Can a person truly live without desire, without attachment, and still function within a society that thrives on consumption and ambition? Are we even capable of such a life, or is it an impossible dream, an ideal too distant to grasp? And yet, there is something hauntingly alluring about this idea, isn't there? Something deeply magnetic. It draws you in, makes you question everything you thought you knew about success, fulfillment, and purpose. What does it mean to be free? What would it feel like to be untouched by the noise of the world, to live without the constant need for more? As you stand there, staring at the lights of the city, an ocean of people consumed by their desires, something begins to stir within you. You feel the tension of this contradiction. You feel the question pressing at your very soul. What if all this striving, all this longing, is not what makes us human after all? What if true humanity lies in letting go? But for now, that question lingers unanswered, and perhaps that is the point. Next, we'll uncover why this tension exists, why the need for more is so deeply embedded within us, and why it's almost impossible to break free from its grip. How did we get here, and what are the psychological and philosophical forces that bind us to this endless cycle? The answer is more complex and darker than you could ever imagine. You may be wondering, why do we need desire in the first place? Is it really a natural part of being human, or is it something that's been imposed on us, crafted by the very systems that now control us? To understand the answer, we must peel back the layers of history, psychology, and philosophy and dig into the fundamental forces that shape who we are. At the core of this problem lies something that has been with humanity for as long as we can remember: the need to belong. In our evolutionary past, our survival depended on our ability to fit in with the group. It wasn't enough to be strong, intelligent, or capable. We needed the approval, the recognition, and the support of others. Our very survival depended on the judgment of the collective, and so, in the earliest days, humans were taught to conform. But as the centuries passed, something shifted. The structures of power, the institutions, and the social dynamics that once existed to support us now began to create the very things that enslave us: desire, fear, and lack. These forces were carefully honed, manipulated, and woven into the fabric of society itself, until we reached a point where desire no longer served us. It controlled us. It defined us. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, once wrote about something he called the shadow, the darker, hidden side of our psyche. It's the part of ourselves that we repress, that we refuse to acknowledge because it doesn't fit within the socially acceptable image of who we are. But Jung also warned that this shadow is far from something to ignore. It is the very force that controls much of our behavior. It isn't just the bad parts of us, but the parts we refuse to integrate, our potential for greatness, our darker desires, and the truths we fear about ourselves. When we turn away from our shadow, when we refuse to acknowledge our desires and impulses, they don't disappear. They fester, they grow, and they find ways to express themselves, often in destructive, unconscious ways. Jung believed that the key to personal transformation was to confront the shadow, to integrate it into our conscious identity. But the modern world has taught us to do the opposite: suppress, ignore, and deny what we truly want. In doing so, we bury our true selves, and in turn, we live in a state of perpetual lack. The system thrives on this emptiness, convincing us that the only way to fill it is through more possessions, more success, more validation. But if we no longer need what the system offers, if we no longer feel the pull of desire, the hunger for approval, then what happens? The system loses its grip on us. And this is exactly what makes the person who needs nothing so dangerous. They are no longer a part of the game. This point connects to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, who believed that humanity was bound by what he called the slave morality, a morality that prioritizes obedience, humility, and self-denial. According to Nietzsche, modern society has conditioned us to suppress our will to power, our innate drive to grow, assert ourselves, and become more than we are. Instead, we are told to conform, to be content with what we have, and to put others' needs above our own. We are trained to desire the things that will keep us compliant: material wealth, social approval, even the illusions of happiness. Nietzsche's answer to this dilemma was radical: embrace the will to power, reject the morality of submission, seize your own path unbound by the expectations of others, and embrace the drive to become, to transcend what society tells you is possible. But how can you embrace the will to power if you are shackled by your desires? If the very system that supports your existence thrives on your inability to escape the cycle of longing and striving? In a sense, Nietzsche's vision is the opposite of the modern world's narrative. In his view, the highest form of human existence is the one who can overcome desire, who can act freely without being chained to the expectations and demands of society. But just as Jung predicted, we have created a world that is profoundly uncomfortable for those who refuse to play by these rules. We have created a world that feeds off the very discontentment that we suppress. Another thinker, Arthur Schopenhauer, offered his own perspective on the matter. For Schopenhauer, the root of all human suffering was desire itself. Our desires are insatiable. They are never fully satisfied, and so they perpetually drive us into conflict, anxiety, and suffering. He argued that true peace, true liberation, could only be found when we renounce our desires, when we eject the constant pursuit of more. And yet, even Schopenhauer could not imagine a society that would allow such peace. What would become of the economy if everyone simply stopped wanting more? What would happen to relationships, to culture, to progress? In many ways, Schopenhauer's philosophy is a profound challenge to the very fabric of modern existence. To need nothing is not just to rebel against the internal struggles of desire, it is to rebel against the entire structure of society itself. But what does this mean for us, as individuals living in this world? It's easy to see how this tension, the pull between what we truly need and what we're taught to desire, creates a profound psychological conflict. On one side, we have the conditioning of society, the advertising, the promises of success and fulfillment. On the other, we have an inner knowing that something isn't right, that there is more to life than simply accumulating, achieving, and conforming. And so, we find ourselves caught in a cycle of endless striving, one that often leads us not toward fulfillment but toward disillusionment. We achieve, we acquire, we become successful, and yet we're still left with a gnawing sense that something is missing. We're not happy, we're not free, we're not fulfilled. The greatest tragedy of all is that we have been led to believe that this cycle is just a natural part of life, that desire is inevitable, and that to need nothing is to be deficient, weak, or incomplete. But what if this belief is a lie? What if the only thing that's broken is the system itself? As we continue to unravel this, we'll begin to see how deeply this system affects us, and why breaking free from it is so much more than an individual pursuit. It's a rebellion against the entire structure that keeps us trapped in the endless pursuit of more. You've probably never noticed how the system's grip on your life subtly seeps into your thoughts, your emotions, and even your very sense of self. It doesn't announce itself loudly. Instead, it quietly molds your existence. It moves beneath the surface of your consciousness, shaping your beliefs, your relationships, and your desires, always guiding you back into the fold, making sure you stay in line. This is the silent, invisible force that keeps the machinery of society in motion. But how does it work? How does it affect the way we think, feel, and act on a daily basis? To answer this, we must look deeper at the psychological and neurological forces that subtly drive us. We are constantly told that our desires are our own, that our choices are ours to make. But the truth is far more insidious. The very desires you think are personal are often nothing more than cultural implants, thoughts, goals, and wants that have been carefully cultivated in you by society. You are not born with a burning desire for a specific brand of phone, or to live in a certain zip code, or to be praised on social media. These are the desires that have been cultivated slowly, relentlessly by the world around you. And they do not serve you, they serve the system. Take, for example, cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that our brains use to make decisions quickly. These biases are not necessarily a reflection of our true desires, but a reflection of the conditioning that society imposes on us. One of the most pervasive of these biases is the bandwagon effect, which causes us to align our preferences with the majority simply because it feels safer to belong. In the world of consumerism, this translates to us chasing after the same products, trends, and goals as everyone else, not because we need them or even want them deeply, but because we fear being left behind. We are programmed to crave what others crave, to desire what others desire. We live in a constant state of comparison, forever measuring our worth against those around us, rather than understanding our own needs. In neurological terms, this constant state of comparison and desire activates a region of the brain known as the ventral striatum, the reward center. It's the same area that responds to addictive substances such as drugs or alcohol, and it's responsible for feelings of pleasure when we receive validation, when we win, when we get what we want. But just like with addiction, the more we chase the reward, the more we become desensitized to it. Our brains begin to crave larger, more intense hits of reward, leading to a never-ending cycle of craving, seeking, and temporary satisfaction. So, what happens when this constant craving for more consumes us? The more we feed our desires, the more we disconnect from what truly matters. We begin to feel like we are incomplete unless we have more status, more attention, more validation. And yet the more we seek, the emptier we feel. It is a cycle of endless consumption with no real fulfillment at the end. This isn't just happening on a psychological level. The societal structures that support this endless craving are deeply ingrained in our systems: advertising, media, education, politics. Each of these reinforces the idea that happiness and success are tied to material gain, recognition, and external approval. Take a look at social media for a moment. It's designed to prey on our desire for validation. Every post, every like, every comment is an opportunity for our brains to get a quick hit of dopamine, a tiny burst of reward that convinces us we're on the right track. And the more we feed into this system, the more we become enslaved by it. But it's not just our neurochemistry at play here. There's also a more insidious force at work, what the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called the look of others. According to Sartre, our identity is shaped by how others perceive us. We are not only what we think we are also what others think we are. This external validation creates a false self, a self that is defined not by its own desires and needs but by the expectations and judgments of others. The result is a fractured identity, a self that cannot truly know itself because it is always looking outward, seeking to mirror the opinions and desires of the world around it. Consider how often you make decisions based on what others will think, whether it's posting a picture online, buying a new car, or choosing a career path. How many of these decisions are truly yours, and how many are reflections of what society has taught you to want? When you act based on external validation, you give up your own autonomy, your own agency. You become a puppet, controlled by the strings of cultural conditioning, social comparison, and fleeting rewards. But even more alarming is how addictive this process becomes. When your worth is tied to external validation, you are no longer in control of your emotions, your actions, or your thoughts. Your brain becomes addicted to the feedback loops created by the rewards of success, recognition, and consumption. Every time you achieve a goal or gain approval, your brain releases a rush of dopamine. Over time, your brain learns to crave this sensation, driving you to make more and more choices that align with this external validation, even if they aren't aligned with your true self. And here lies the danger. These addictions are insidious. You may not even realize they are happening. The rewards you receive from society feel good in the moment, but they are hollow. They don't lead to fulfillment or contentment. They lead only to a deeper sense of emptiness, because they reinforce the idea that you are incomplete, that you need something outside of yourself to feel whole. There's another side to this coin, though, a side that most people don't see. As long as you remain trapped in the cycle of desire and external validation, you remain subjugated to the system. You are a cog in the machine, perpetuating its existence, supporting its growth. But the moment you realize that you don't need these external rewards, that you can exist beyond them, you start to collapse the very foundations of the system. It's not just the pursuit of desire that keeps the world in motion, it's the belief that we need to keep pursuing. The system feeds on our insecurity, our addiction to approval, and our desire to belong. But what happens when we see through this? What happens when we stop chasing? The consequences of this realization are profound, both on a personal and societal level. On a personal level, you begin to free yourself from the prison of desire. You start to reclaim your autonomy, your peace, your true identity. You step off the treadmill, no longer running in circles, and for the first time, you can breathe. On a societal level, however, this freedom can't be tolerated. The system has invested too much in your constant need for more, in your belief that you are incomplete without it. And so, the moment you decide that you need nothing, you become a threat, not just to the expectations of others, but to the very structure that sustains this world. And the system will do everything in its power to silence that threat. But before we can understand just how deep this resistance goes, we need to see the full scope of the rebellion that is possible. How do we break free? What tools, what mindset shifts can we use to escape the chains of desire and the trap of external validation? The answer is more radical and more empowering than you might think. It's easy to believe that to break free from the system's grip requires some grand, heroic act, something revolutionary, something radical. But what if the rebellion isn't loud or violent? What if it's quiet, subtle, and personal? What if breaking free isn't about changing the world, but changing yourself, and in doing so, dismantling the entire system from within? The first step in this rebellion is to acknowledge the illusion. You must see the truth. That desire, at its core, is an illusion, a trick that has been played on you. The world around you thrives on the belief that your happiness, your fulfillment, your sense of worth is dependent on external sources. But when you realize that these desires are artificially constructed, not born from your own inherent nature, you begin to reclaim your power. This is where the rebellion begins. The illusion of desire is not a new concept. Think of Aldous Huxley, who in his dystopian novel Brave New World explored a world where people are kept docile and compliant through superficial pleasure and a constant bombardment of desires. The people in Huxley's world are not truly free. They are slaves to their pleasures, addicted to the need for constant stimulation, for distraction, for consumption. The world is constructed to make sure they never ask the deeper questions, never confront the void within themselves, because that would disturb the peace. In Huxley's vision, happiness is not found in freedom or meaning, but in numbing the mind, in drowning out the discomfort of existence with superficial desires. This is the system at work, not forcing you into conformity with chains and bars, but making sure that you never feel the need to break free because you are endlessly distracted by the false promise of happiness. You are told to buy, to achieve, to perform, and you are given fleeting moments of pleasure to keep you compliant. But the moment you wake up to the reality of this illusion, something begins to shift, and the shift happens inside of you. It is a mental and emotional liberation. You no longer need what the system offers because you begin to recognize that you were never lacking in the first place. You were never broken, never incomplete. The emptiness that the world tells you exists within you was a product of its conditioning. And now that you see through it, the grip it had on you begins to dissolve. But how do you begin this journey? How do you go from simply acknowledging the illusion to actively breaking free from it? The first essential tool in your rebellion is the practice of mindful detachment. This isn't about renouncing everything you've ever enjoyed or giving up your ambitions. It's about cultivating the awareness to detach from the constant pull of desire and the need for validation. It's about stepping back and examining each desire as it arises, asking yourself, is this truly mine? Is this what I truly need? Or is this something the world has told me I should want? This practice of detachment allows you to create space between you and your desires. It gives you the ability to choose whether or not you want to engage with them. It doesn't mean you stop wanting things altogether. It means that you stop being enslaved by them. This is where true freedom begins. Consider the approach of Viktor Frankl, the renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl writes about how, even in the most horrific conditions, he found meaning and purpose that were not dependent on external circumstances. His ability to detach from the horrors around him and focus on a higher sense of purpose allowed him to transcend his suffering. Frankl's insights point to a profound truth. Our meaning in life is not created by our external circumstances or the things we accumulate. It is created by the choices we make about how we respond to those circumstances. Frankl's understanding of existential freedom, the freedom to choose one's attitude, even in the most dire situations, directly challenges the very foundations of the consumer society. This is the mindset shift you need to begin to see that your freedom is not found in what you acquire or achieve, but in your ability to choose your responses to the world around you. In practical terms, this means questioning every belief that underpins the desires you are taught to chase. Ask yourself, why do I want this promotion? Why do I feel empty when I don't get the attention I seek? What will my life truly be like if I stop pursuing this goal? The answers may surprise you, and as you begin to peel back these layers of conditioning, you will uncover a deeper, truer self, one that does not need external approval or the approval of the system to feel whole. The next step is to embrace voluntary discomfort. This is a counterintuitive practice, intentionally choosing discomfort in order to break free from the comforts and distractions that keep you enslaved. Whether it's fasting, taking cold showers, practicing silence, or living with less, these small acts of discomfort force you to detach from the immediate pleasures and satisfactions that society tells you are essential. By choosing discomfort, you create a psychological distance between yourself and the need for constant pleasure and validation. This is where Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, the overman or superman, becomes relevant. Nietzsche's Übermensch is someone who creates his own values, who transcends the herd mentality, and who embraces hardship as a path to personal growth. This is not a denial of pleasure, but a rejection of the notion that pleasure, fame, wealth, and external approval are the things that define a successful life. The Übermensch is free because he does not need to conform to society's demands. On embracing voluntary discomfort, you begin to rewire your brain, shifting its dependence away from external rewards and reinforcements. You strengthen your sense of internal agency and begin to form a deeper connection with yourself, a connection that is not defined by the ever-changing standards of society, but by your own sense of purpose and clarity. And lastly, you must seek solitude. In a world that thrives on constant connection, noise, and distraction, the act of stepping away from the world, taking time for yourself, away from the demands of social life, consumerism, and even relationships, becomes an essential tool in reclaiming your true self. It is in solitude that you begin to hear your own voice above the noise, to reconnect with the deeper layers of your identity. The world will not give you the space to hear yourself. You must take it. When you embrace solitude, you begin to realize something profound. You don't need the validation of others to be whole. You don't need the opinions of your peers, the approval of your boss, or the likes on your social media posts. You simply need to be. This is how you begin to break free. This is the rebellion that will dismantle the system, not through force or violence, but through the quiet, powerful act of stepping away from its demands. And as you walk this path, as you choose freedom over conformity, you'll begin to realize something powerful. The true revolution has nothing to do with overthrowing others. It is an inner revolution, a revolt against the internalized need for validation and external approval. It is a revolt against the desires that keep you tethered to the machine. And in this rebellion, you will find something far greater than the system can ever offer: freedom, peace, and the power to live life on your own terms. But this is not the end. There is a final realization, a truth that will reshape everything you thought you knew about existence. This final insight will complete the rebellion, and it will change your life forever. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, gazing into the abyss. Below, there is nothing but emptiness, no answers, no security, no external validations, just a vast, open nothingness. And in that moment, something stirs within you, a quiet, almost imperceptible shift. It's as if the very air around you has changed. You begin to understand that this emptiness is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced. It is freedom. The final realization, the one that has been lurking beneath all of the previous layers of understanding, is simple but profound. You are not your desires. You are not what you achieve. You are not what you own. And you are not what others think of you. Your true essence, your core identity, exists beyond all of these external markers. You are the one who witnesses, who observes, who chooses, who exists without need. In the search for freedom from the system, you have unwittingly stumbled upon a greater truth, that your true self is already complete. You have always been complete, but you've been blinded by the endless pursuit of external fulfillment. Blinded by the demands of the system that tell you that you need something outside of yourself to feel whole. This truth is the deepest freedom of all. It's not the freedom that comes from breaking chains or overthrowing rulers. It's the freedom that comes from realizing you were never chained to begin with. You've always had the key. This realization is terrifying because it forces you to confront the illusion of scarcity that has been drilled into you since birth. The idea that you are incomplete, that you need something more, something else, to be whole. This is the lie that sustains society's grip on you, the lie that fuels consumption, the chase for validation, and the desire for power. But once you see through this illusion, everything changes. You begin to reclaim your autonomy in a way that is not about asserting control over the world, but about withdrawing your energy from the world's demands. The system, with all its distractions, cannot touch you because you no longer need anything from it. You have detached yourself from the endless cycle of wanting, achieving, and consuming, and in doing so, you step outside of the system entirely. This freedom comes with a quiet power, the power to exist authentically without the need to prove anything to anyone. You no longer measure your worth by the number of followers you have, or the accolades you collect, or the things you own. You measure your worth by the truth that you are enough, just as you are. This is the ultimate rebellion. It is the radical act of rejecting the belief that you need to be anything other than who you are in this very moment. Carl Jung spoke of the importance of embracing the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we deny, repress, or ignore. When you step out of the system's demand for constant striving and validation, you begin to see your shadow more clearly. And in that confrontation, you realize that your shadow isn't something to be ashamed of. It is part of your wholeness, the darkness, the contradictions, the imperfections. They are all part of what makes you fully human. You no longer need to hide from them or strive to be perfect. You simply need to be present with them. In this acceptance, you become whole. This is the secret to true liberation, not the accumulation of things, nor the mastery of external forces, but the embracing of yourself as you are, unshackled from the expectations of the world. It is an act of radical self-acceptance. The more you allow yourself to be who you truly are, without the need for anyone else's approval, without the need for validation, the more you begin to understand the universe itself. The system thrives on the belief that you need something outside of yourself to be complete. But when you recognize that the power, the beauty, and the fullness of life is already within you, you realize that there is no need for the external world to validate you. You become like the man who needs nothing. And this man, this person who has freed themselves from the constant demand for more, from the addiction to validation, from the endless chase of external rewards, becomes a threat to the system. Not because of any act of rebellion or violence, but because their very existence undermines the foundation upon which the system stands. The system needs you to believe that you are incomplete, that you need something to feel whole, but the moment you step outside of that belief, you render the system powerless. This is the power of nothingness. In a world that tells you that you need to be constantly striving, acquiring, and achieving, the man who needs nothing becomes the most dangerous person of all, because unlike everyone else, he has no stake in the system. He is not bound by its rules, its expectations, or its desires. He exists simply as he is, and in doing so, he becomes the ultimate disruptor. This truth is unsettling, even uncomfortable, but it is the ultimate freedom, the freedom to live without need, to be without fear, to create without striving. It is the freedom that comes from realizing that nothing external can ever define you. It is the freedom to exist in the fullness of your own being, without the need for the system to tell you who you are or what you need. In this realization, you come to understand that life itself, with all its contradictions, its chaos, its suffers, is the greatest teacher of all. The system, with all its illusions, fades into the background as you step into the vast, open space of your own true self. You no longer live to conform, to achieve, or to acquire. You live simply to be, and in doing so, you create a life that is richer, deeper, and more meaningful than anything the system could ever promise. The final truth is this: you are the revolution, not because of any action you take in the world, but because of the way you choose to live. When you step outside the system's demands and live without need, you change everything, not by fighting the system, but by refusing to play its game. And in this refusal, you find a peace that no external force can ever take away. This is the ultimate truth. This is the final revelation, and it is the greatest freedom you will ever know.